Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to Growing Good Humans podcast. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have Susan Knoppow join us today. Her name does not spell the same way it sounds. So we were just talking about that. Joining us in this continued journey to find ways to make the college application process joyful, deliberate, and simple. And I have had the chance to follow Susan as a educational consultant, following her work and incorporating her ideas into our practice. And we had recently a seminar with her and a bunch of team members of ours. And I thought, we have to get her in front of parents. We have to get you in front of parents, Susan. So listen, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, your business, talk to us, and then I have bunches of questions that people have already sent in. So I want to get going. As everyone knows, I promise 30 minutes. We stop on time, so we'll get where we get, but we want to make this easy and let's just have fun.
Thanks, Laura. I'm thrilled to be here. So our company is called Wow Writing Workshop. So we're at wowwritingworkshop.com. And we work with students exclusively on college essays. That's our area of expertise. So I am a writer and a writing teacher. My partner, Kim Lifton, is a journalist, also a writing teacher. We have an amazing team of coaches, and we have a 10-step method. The link is on your website there. So if anyone wants to see our 10 steps, we work with students all over the world. And one of the things we're most proud of is that we train our colleagues. So folks like you, Laura, and other IECs, other independent consultants, school counselors, essay specialists, we teach them our method, which simplifies and streamlines the essay process. And really our philosophy is that students can do this. They really, really can. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of distraction. And that if we can simplify and streamline the process and help students maintain momentum, they can get this done. And we're at the time of year right now, we're getting a lot of feedback from our students, and they're saying how relieved they are, how easy it was, how surprised they are that it wasn't stressful. And that really makes us happy. So by background, I'm a writer, I'm a communication specialist, I'm an educator. And we really love working with students, and we thoroughly enjoy working with our colleagues so that more students can benefit from the way we work. So I welcome your questions. Ask me anything.
Perfect. I'm going to dive right in because we have a bunch and we don't have too much time. But first question, what in your opinion makes a great college essay?
I love that question. I get it all the time, and then I tweak it. So people ask us all the time, what makes a great college essay? What makes the best college essay? And I change that superlative, that great, wonderful, standout, unique, and I change it and I replace it with the word effective. We like to say, here's what makes an effective college essay, whether it's a Common App personal statement, University of California personal insight question, a supplement for any school, a scholarship essay. What makes an effective essay is something that, first of all, answers the question. You probably wouldn't be surprised, but parents might be surprised at how many students don't really answer the question. They're so distracted by trying to be unique and great and special and all of these things that they don't really answer the question. So first, it answers the prompt. It shows reflection. The purpose of any college essay is to demonstrate that the student knows something about themselves beyond what they've accomplished. So we like to focus on characteristics. What are some of your best characteristics? If a student can emphasize the things that make them great, then they will have a great college essay because it will answer the question, it'll show reflection. And we like to say, talk about things that happened in the relatively recent past. Don't tell us stories about when you were 12. Those might be amazing, but that's not really what folks are looking for. So in our method, we always start with step one, which is to understand the prompt. Before we even talk about ideas about what might make a great essay for this student, what would make an effective essay for this student, we confirm that they really understand the question. And so that little bit, so to tell parents, rather than brainstorming ideas with your student, off the top of your head, what's the most amazing thing you've ever done? What's unique about you? No. Make sure you and your child understand the question. What are they asking? And why would they ask this? Look at the rest of the application. It's full of opportunities to share accomplishments. There's lots of places. I mean, easiest in the activity section, you have your transcript, you have all sorts of places where we can tell the reader what a student has done. But the essays offer an opportunity to demonstrate who they are. They don't have to be written like a professional. In fact, they shouldn't. That's a red flag. They don't need to be perfect. They don't have to be unique. And when you lower the stakes and lower the heat on what this task is, students really shine. So what makes a great essay? An essay that's effective is a great essay.
What a great answer. I remember, did you ever see that episode of Modern Family where she's like, I hate you, Mom. You didn't make my life miserable and I don't have a challenge to overcome. And the mom drives her straight up to like the top of Hollywood and drops her off and makes her walk home. And like 6 hours later, she comes home. And I think that's something that I have loved learning in this process is it really isn't necessarily about this giant thing you had to have done. And so you just said it so beautifully. What about topics to avoid? This is one that in our practice, we really have to kind of like, how do we help students and parents, especially realize that, man, that's not the right way to go?
Well, actually, I'll push back on that too. I don't think there's any topic that must be avoided as long as the essay shines a positive light on the student.
Okay.
So, like you were saying, the example you're giving, they don't have to have overcome anything. I mean, I like to say to parents all the time, normal people get to go to college too. Average human beings, I say, look at your friends, look at your doctors and dentists and lawyers and the people who mow your lawn and whoever. Regular people get to go to college. You do not have to be extraordinary and exceptional. And I think, like I said, lowering the heat helps students realize that they are good enough, they are interesting enough, they're fine. In fact, they have everything they need. So, topics to avoid. We say that there are approaches to avoid, not topics to avoid. You can write about anything. So, for example, one of the common things people say is don't write about, mental health struggles, don't write about controversial topics. And I say you can write about anything. If you're writing about a sensitive topic, whether it's related to mental health, politics, strong feelings about different issues, anything like that, as long as you know, understand the prompt, understand who's going to read it. Why are you telling this? So if a student wants to say, I have anxiety, no, that is not necessary to put in your application. If they want to say, I have lived with anxiety, and because I've really learned to manage it, here's an example of a time when I used my tools to have a positive outcome. That, like I said before, that demonstrates reflection. If they're so in it that it's such a struggle that they can't reflect yet, that they couldn't take editorial feedback. I couldn't, help them improve a sentence. They're going to cry. It's not time yet. So that's one type of don't write, they hear don't write about this. They can write about it. The purpose is not to say something negative. Someone has died in my family or I've had a tragedy. It's here's how I've managed that and used it in my life if they have that kind of story. And second category of, don't write about sports. Don't write about sports, especially students. I like to tell parents, if your kid is a baseball prodigy or only, spends half their time playing tennis, that's where real things happen to them. That is where they live their life. That is where they have their most important experiences. If a student, so what we do is I said our first step was to understand the prompt. Our second step is to brainstorm ideas. And before we meet with a student, we want several ideas. We want to know, what's the anchor story? What's the thing, the kernel of something you want to talk about? Why are you telling me this? What characteristics does it illustrate? Which prompt does it respond to? So if it's a supplement, we know what prompt it responds to. And if a story is the right thing to say, talk about, great. If it's a series of facts, fine. But we want to know, what do you want to write about and why? And a little bit of detail. So then when I sit down with the student, I know that those are thought starters. Those are conversation starters. I don't expect a student who's never applied to college before to have brilliant insight off the bat. I have done this for 15 years. I have worked with hundreds of students and trained hundreds of counselors. I can find a story anywhere. And we joke that my partner, Kim, can get a story out of a tree. She can find a story where there's no story. So if a student brings me a story about a sports event, for example, they're very proud. I got the winning goal. Now someone might say, don't write about that. I think, don't write about that, but I don't say anything. Instead, I want to find out why that matters to the student. So I will say, okay, tell me about this. Well, I tore my ACL and I was off the team for a whole season and I was really frustrated, but I came back the next year and we got into the championship because I did, fill in the blank, whatever miraculous deed they did. And I say, okay, first question, if you hadn't won the game, would it still be a good story? Oh, that's a good question. If it's only impressive because you won or because it happened, on a famous mountain or whatever, then it's a story about that place in time. It's not a story about, it's not reflective. It's not telling me about you. It's telling me about what you've done, not who you are.
This is something that would happen to me. Usually in my podcast, like the lawn mowers come.
Of course, there's noise behind me. So that's really important. Now I want to know, well, why is this? And they say, yeah, it was amazing. Why? I'm curious. So the thing we like to say is I'm curious and I'm willing to be surprised. I'm willing to let that ACL story turn into something real. And as I talk to the student, they say, well, I've always gotten everything I wanted. And this was the first time that I was really unable to do the thing I wanted to do, which was I was going to be the star on the JV team, sophomore year, and I didn't get to do it. And I had to sit on the bench. Oh, well, that's interesting. What did you do? Oh, well, I started paying attention to the defensive plays because I'm a defensive player. I noticed these things. I started telling my coach, and my coach said, you need to write that down. That's very insightful. And then I was able to help the team do some things I hadn't done before because I saw it from a distance rather than being in it. Now I have a story about making something out of nothing, being resourceful, being creative, dealing with disappointment. Those are characteristics. Now I have a story. If I had told that student, don't write about sports or don't write about service trips or don't write about camp, everyone writes about, trying out for the marching band and becoming first chair flute. I never say no. I say why. Tell me, people always ask, what are some of your great brainstorm questions? And I say, my best brainstorm question is not a question, it's a statement. Tell me more about that. It demonstrates that I'm curious, that I think the student has something worthwhile to say. We just haven't gotten there yet. So the approach of the person and parents, this is really important. The approach of the person who's talking to the student about what they might write, it matters what you say and how you say it. So that's why we also say, don't look at sample essays. They will just make you sad and feel, insufficient.
Actually, we're in trouble. We're in trouble because we have our students read lots of sample essays, but we have a collection of them that are not the most fancy ones, right. Blah, blah, blah. We try to show them that these are some of the simplest stories. As a matter of fact, I'll just say this really quick. I have so many essays from this season that have warmed my heart, but one of them was about a girl who was very clear who she wanted to write about her OCD. And it ended up being just funny and powerful, and how she really is like the absolute most organized person you could ever, you can depend on her to dot every I and cross every T. And she gives all these examples. And then we had another one that was really fun that was all about the sports. She played ice hockey, and she did win the winning game and all of that. But then she shifted it to how she was a cellist and how scoring at, how the feeling of that aggression she puts on the field is such a contrast to the grace she has to have when she plays the cello. And it was just, so I love that. Tell me more. What else can we connect it to? Those kind of questions. Now, what I want to do is be I really wanted parents to hear this. And the reason why is because I have this parent community, because not everybody can afford to pay fancy pants fees.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have this community so that people had access to this kind of information if they are DIYing it, which is a lot of people.
Yes.
And so let's talk for a second about parents' role
Yeah.
in this process. Those parents who are going to be helping and guiding, what are some like top tips?
Okay, top tips for parents. And also one of the resource links we gave you on your website, so I would encourage parents to go there. We have a book, How to Write an Effective College Application Essay. We have a link to the ebook. It's free and it's meant for parents. It's written to students, but it's meant for parents. What can you do? And I'll tell you a funny story. The reason we started writing this book at all, the earlier version of it, was because my business partner's sister, her child, so Kim's nephew, was applying to college, and her sister said, so what should I do? And Kim said, stay out of it. It's not for you. It's only for your child. And she laughed and she said, are you kidding? I will be involved. Give me a job. And we thought, oh, yeah, right. Parents, you live with your kid. You are the one, you know things, and they're going to go, many students are going to want to go to their parents for support. So top tips for parents. Number one, stay positive. If you're going to freak out to somebody else. Do not tell your child, I don't know if that's a great topic. I'm afraid that this might not look good on your application. They're nervous enough. And you know this. I've done this with 3 of my own children, let alone all the students I've worked with over the years. My youngest is a senior in college this year. So if all goes well, I will have 3 college graduates. Call me back in June. So to parents, I say, stay positive. This is the last thing left. They've done all the things. They either took calculus or they didn't. They were either in the orchestra or they weren't. They either volunteered or they didn't. I mean, they can still do these things, obviously, but for the most part, all of the other elements of the college application are pretty much done. Maybe they're going to take the SAT again. Maybe their, first semester grades have to be outstanding in order to balance out something that happened last year. But this feels heavier because it's all that's left. So you need to be calm. Fake it if you have to. Go scream in another room. Throw a pillow at the wall. That's the first thing. Number 2, think about what's amazing about your child. Characteristics. Help them get away from the idea of accomplishments and best topics and think about positive characteristics. And what we like to say is when they're done reading my application, they will know that I am what? Yes, they'll know that I am, a tennis player, or I am on the chess team, or I have taken 37 AP courses. I am a compassionate listener. I am resilient. I am a good problem solver. You don't need to make a perfect list and check them all off. I do not recommend that. But help your student think from the beginning that essays are an opportunity to show qualitative characteristics, qualities, things that are hard to measure. It's easy to measure how many APs you've taken or how challenging the curriculum is at your school based on all the data that colleges have. So number 1, stay positive, focus on characteristics, and follow their lead. So remember I said before we meet with students, I can meet a student and I could give them 83 ideas, even a kid I don't know, let alone, a counselor like Laura, like you, who knows your students and have experience with them and have, know their parent. I don't know my students before I meet them. I'm working on essays with them, and that's it. And sometimes I'm working on essays with my colleagues' students, so I really don't know them. They could be Laura's, they could be your students, and you've given them to me just to work on the essays, and I don't know anything except what you tell me. So parent, you know your student, think characteristics, think qualities, think positive, and then think of the essays as a strategic package. They're filling in blanks, whether it's one essay, whether it's the Common App and they just have one essay, or it's a school like Stanford and there's multiple essays, or the University of California and there's 4 personal insight questions. Think of them as pieces of a larger puzzle that also go along with the application. So think big, pull out, really, really pull back, because students get very laser focused on this topic and this essay and this sentence. Last tip, focus on content. What are you going to write? Often students will dive in and write a draft, and a very well-meaning parent will start to mark up the grammar. That's going to send you, first of all, it's going to get your kid writing 12 drafts, which you really, really don't want. And two, it's very demoralizing. A student who can't spell knows they can't spell. You don't need to point it out the first time you read the essay. If you focus on, we say content comes first. The first 6 steps of our 10-step process are all about content. That's what am I going to write? Then comes structure. Next is structure. After the content is solid, structure. How am I going to move through the essay? How do I start it? How do I end it? So the same thing, no comments on, I don't think this is the right first line. Maybe you start over here. Not when you first read the first draft. The first draft is content, is all the stuff there. Run-on sentences, fragments, poor transitions, don't worry about it yet. What we do with a first draft is we ask questions. Tell me more about this. Where did this happen? You told me this and this and this about this experience, but it's not in here. I want you to write a little more about it. And it doesn't matter if you know exactly where in the essay that's going to go. It's just content. Then is structure. Structure is more conventional feedback. I think you can cut this back a little bit. You can, fill this piece out a little bit. This is beautiful, but you've said this 3 times. You could really get rid of a couple mentions. And finally, 3rd, 4th, 5th draft, that's the polish review. That's commas, that's spelling. What we have learned is that in most cases, students will revise their way into a very clean draft. But if we start focusing on the things, those measurable quantitative things at the beginning, they get nervous again and they worry about every single sentence. So we even say to them, it doesn't have to be beautiful at first. In fact, make it messy, make it too long, ramble. It's okay, because by writing the essay, then revising it a couple of times, focusing on content, followed by structure, followed by polish, they'll end up with an essay that sounds like them. And then the final piece of advice is pay a lot of attention to the balance between your child's willingness and ability. Do not strictly focus on ability. So a parent will say, well, my child is an extraordinary writer. I don't know why this sounds like it was written by a child. And I say, because your child is a child and this is what they sound like. And it's good and it's enough. And they wrote 4 drafts. And this is as far as they are willing and able to go. You do not need to send it to your sister-in-law who's, an editor at a major metropolitan daily newspaper. It's good enough. So let your child be who they are. That's my main advice. Let them be themselves and give them positive feedback for it.
Lovely. What about these drafts? I think one of the things I faced in our practice, and we do all of our own personal statements with our students, mostly because I love writing and I love this process with students, and we do know our students so deeply. And I think that I get stuck on how many drafts. It's like enough to be able to. You can bring the puppy in.
Yeah, she's coming in. She's in, she's out. She's in, she's out. She's the office dog. Sorry for the distraction. Keeping it very informal. Go ahead.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. So, I mean, I am curious, how many drafts and when is it time to put it to rest?
Yes. That goes to willingness and ability as well. So I said we have 10 steps. First draft is step 5. So before that, we've done writing exercises, all kinds of steps. Step 6 is content exercises. So when we do training with professionals, they write an essay with us. They actually experience this. We call that program the College Essay Experience. So they are, to parents, if you ever are working with a professional and it says, wow, certified essay coach, that means they worked with us. They wrote an essay with us. They know our process. So step 6 is reflection on the content. Step 7 is a second draft. Step 8 is reflection on that draft. Step 9 is another draft. So we say minimum of 3 drafts, at least on the very first essay, maybe not for every single one. And maximum, we try to stay at 5. Maybe they need two maybe they need two structured drafts, maybe they need a couple of polished drafts. But past that, you're over polishing. Then it's too much input by the adults. And we really need to be careful. We don't need to polish the life out of these essays. In fact, we go to conferences all the time and we ask the admissions counselors, the people at the universities and colleges, what do you want us to tell our students? And they say, you don't have to impress me so much. Just write, just answer the question. And that's enough. So we think that 5 is sort of should be the goal for the max. I mean, occasionally we have more than that, but not to keep going. And that means telling a student also, stop, enough. You're going to polish the life out of it. And that seems to work. It helps us stay focused as well.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you're a writer, I'm a writer, it's like, when I was at a reading the other day, or actually this summer, of this really famous writer, and she was up doing a reading, and she was reading out of her book, and she pulled out her pen in the book she was reading. She's like, God, and she's like, I even want to edit this, like it's hard to know when to stop. And I think it's just such a relief to know that it's that piece of, you and I go to the same conferences, right? And we listen to these admissions directors, and they're like, it just feels like the ones that are over polished go into a pile of like, this is the over polished pile written by a way too nosy educational consultant or a parent. Yes. Right. And
yeah. And it's not necessarily going to keep a student out of that school, but it's not going to help them get in. And everything they can do to help themselves get in, the more real it sounds, the more real it is. I mean, Kim tried once years and years ago to write something as though she were her daughter. She was like, I'm going to see if it's really possible. And her daughter looked at it and said, Mom, that doesn't even sound like me. She's like, well, I use the words you use it. She said, no, it sounds like you pretending to be me. So we can't even do it.
We won't even go there with the question that I asked you in our counselor meeting. I'm like, so what about writing students' essays? And the reason I say it is because we all know it is not ethical. Mm-hmm. And we all know that there is a tempting moment where it's like, and I'm someone who likes to just call it out. Mm-hmm. And that, obviously to be ethical and to model being ethical for your student, being a think partner is going to be much better in the long run for you and your child's life. And I'm speaking to myself as well, even as an educational consultant, like to really let that child find their voice. It is such a celebration when they read that essay at the end. We have all of our students read them out loud to us when they're done. And it's such a beautiful moment. I'm trying to think of like, if we have 2 minutes left, what feels most relevant to you right now? I mean, we have questions about what to do when students are overwhelmed. Anything else that you
actually
feel like
that's a good place. That's a good place to spend our last 2 minutes. And it's tied to what you just said. This is very hard. If your child cannot finish their essays, do not write them for them. First of all, early action, early decision is not the only way to apply. Applications are open into the winter. If they don't get that application in because they couldn't finish and you're like, I'll just do it myself, don't do that. Bad message, bad precedent, and think of what that says to your child. So if they're stressed, if they're overwhelmed, then let them wait. If they don't get to apply to a particular school because they didn't finish their essays, well, life lesson, right? No one is going, it's not going to be the catastrophe of their life. There's lots of schools out there. The third thing I would say regarding that kind of stress often comes from the feeling that it is so important. So a student is so overwhelmed. This is so important, I can't even start. Or it's so important, I can't finish. Remind them that they are enough, that they are qualified. And I'm assuming that they have a list of schools they're applying to that they are qualified for. That's step number 1. A good list can take a lot of the pressure off the essays. So if the list is too ambitious and it's making them choke, then reduce the list. There are so many good schools out there. I finished with this. People ask us all the time, well, where did your coaches go to college? I'm like, our coach who's been with us the longest, who is an extraordinary teacher, He went to Central Michigan University. It is an excellent university. He was a writing student. He was an English student, of course, but he went to a regular college. I don't have to tell you that my coaches went to Yale. I mean, I wouldn't, it's not a problem if they did, but that's not what you need. You need, as a parent, you need to listen. You need to respect your students' ability and willingness. And you need to help them use this experience writing their essays to prepare them for college. They're going to face a lot of challenges once they leave home. Help them. You can help them here. And it's about more than writing, and it's about more than one essay at a time. It's about reminding them that they're ready for this and that you believe in them. Because I know, as a parent and as a counselor, as a writing coach, if I believe in them and I help them really, really internalize that, they feel stronger going forward. And ultimately, that's what matters.
And that is the perfect way to end, because that's why people like you and me show up every day for these kids, to grow good humans, not just get them into college. And I think this process is such an invitation for parents and counselors to do that. So thank you so much. I hope you will be a regular guest on our podcast, and I wish you the best as you head into personal statement season. And I'll see you back.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Laura. Bye.
Bye-bye.